So I get to brag on my brother for just a moment. Janai, thank you so much for doing this. This is your show. I'm going to shut up and let you be a pro. But I want to brag for a minute on this unique human being. By the way, we have 100 delegates that are watching, founding delegates is watching online. You'll be reading their documents as they publish them over the course of the next few months. Danya Diaz, who is with Rock Nation, which is Jay-Z. You've got Curly Dossman, and I mean all these heroes and shit. Jotaka Edie. Just all these heroes and sheroes. There's too many to name, but please go online and look at these names. They're pretty. Lorraine Cochran Johnson, CEO of DeKalb County, first female CEO of DeKalb County. Dr. Ben Chavis, Melanie Campbell, amazing group. But this guy here, doctorate in theology, fifth pastor of Ebenezer Church, which is Dr. Martin Luther King's church. Can't make this up, Mayor Young. Pastor Young would say, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. What's the chances? You got Dr. Bernice A. King, the daughter. You got Pastor Andrew Young, the strategist. Online, you got Reverend Jesse Jackson, his kids. The kids are trying to find a way to get on before we end to say something. We're honored by that. You've got the bookend. Now you've got the future. You have the past story, the narrative. Here you are. This guy bridges the past and the future. Fifth pastor of Ebenezer Church. In addition to that job, I believe the first U.S. senator from the South. I don't know if that's the case, at least in the last 100 years, of the U.S. Senate, and on the banking committee, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a voice of reason in the right season, able to talk to everybody, bridging gaps. Thank you for running from your vote to come back to be with us. You are brilliant. You are absolutely brilliant, and I love you so much, and we're so honored that you're there. And I was just meeting with Secretary, who, by the way, bragged on you as one of the people that they thought really was a very rational voice always. You're hard on them, which is you're supposed to be, but you talk without being offensive, you listen without being defensive, you leave even your adversary with their dignity. So I just want to personally say, much love.
Thank you, dear brother John Bryant. Always great to be with you, and you're much too generous in your introductions, but I appreciate it, and it's wonderful to be here.
All right, John hopped off, so I'll take over. I'm Janai Norman with ABC News. It is a pleasure to be here, so thank you to John and Mayor Young. Senator Warnock, thank you for joining us. We've also got Killer Mike Render, as well as Alex Rodriguez, who's going to be joining us also. Appreciate those balloons, Mike. Senator Warnock, let's start with you because I know you have to jump off soon. But as John was saying, you're an incredible man. Aside from your duties as a U.S. state senator, you occupy the pulpit of the very congregation that Dr. King led. And for many years, you've advocated for the least amongst us. What types of successful initiatives or programs have you encountered, and what would you like to see that would help advance economic growth and achievement for all of us?
Well, thank you so much, Janai. It's wonderful to be here with you, and so grateful for the genius and gifts of my friend and brother, Michael Render, Killer Mike, as he's known, A-Rod, brothers, both of whom can do things and that I can't even begin to think about. But great to be here with both of you. Listen, as John pointed out, I've been very blessed in my life. Pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, a PhD, United States Senator. I mention those things not to brag on myself, but just to point out the fact that I understand personally the importance of good public policy, which is why I decided to run for the United States Senate. You're looking not just at a U.S. Senator, you're looking at a kid who grew up in public housing, in the projects. You're looking at someone who was a Head Start baby. So I'm an alum of Head Start, which a program which is being shuttered right now. Even as we speak, it is very short-sighted on the part of the administration. The best investment we can do is in our children, particularly our kids between the ages of 0 and 5. Head Start gets kids ready for kindergarten and keeps them from ending up in prison. And you're looking at an example of that. We should be expanding Head Start, not following the awful blueprint of Project 2025 and dismantling this program, which Dr. King, whom we all remember today, would be supporting and advancing and calling on us to expand. Let me just take a moment and just pause and acknowledge the sacredness of this day. We are standing on the shoulders of giants. We are sitting here on holy ground this day, April 1st, 1968. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., as was the case of the one whom he served, Jesus the Christ. No one could take his life. He laid it down. He laid it down for the vision of a broader vision of what our humanity could be. We all know that Dr. King lost his life today, but I think it's important to remember why he was in Memphis in the first place. He was fighting for workers. He was fighting for the working poor. There was a local movement and they were trying to gain steam and they were struggling. But on February 1st, 1968, 2 sanitation workers, Robert Walker and Echo Cole, were literally crushed to death in the compactor of their truck. Think about it, it's 1968. Civil rights law has already been passed, supposedly integrating public accommodations. But the reason this happened in the first place is it was a torrential rain. They were not allowed to go into the facility and find shelter because segregation was still in place de facto. And these young Black men, ages 30 and 36, with families that loved them, were crushed by their trucks. And as is the case so often, the crushing of the poor, in this case, literally fueled the movement. It attracted a weary Martin Luther King Jr. who was busy planning the Poor People's Campaign. He said, I better make a detour. And he made his way to Memphis, first in March, came back in April, and walked into destiny as a result of it. All of these years later, the poor are still being crushed. Later tonight, I will literally be on the floor of the Senate, voting all night, trying as best we can to slow down, to stop an awful budget that many of my colleagues are focused on passing. It's going to cut Medicaid by $800 billion. When you talk about Medicaid, you're talking about children, you're talking about seniors and nursing homes, you're talking about the disabled. We've got to capture the vision of the man whom we celebrate today. And let me just say that I have not lost hope. My story doesn't allow me to give in, to say that all is lost. We've seen tough days before. When I was born, Georgia was represented by 2 segregationist senators. One said, we love the Negro in his place, and his place is at the back door. Well, I sit in his seat. And so we have to stand up in this moment, fight for the best in the American spirit, make sure that we create a path for all of our children. For me, that's Head Start. For me, that's the expanded child tax credit. For me, that's workforce development, a program that I'm working so hard on, and so much more.
Senator Reverend Warnock, we appreciate you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We know you're going to be there for that votorama later. So thank you again. We also have Ray McGuire, who's joined us. And Ray, I'm sorry I didn't introduce you from the beginning, but he's one of the highest ranking, longest serving Black executives on Wall Street, currently the president of Lazard. So appreciate you joining the conversation also. All of you, all 3 of you, have committed your careers to using your public platforms to drive awareness, not only awareness, but to solutions to the challenges of expanding economic opportunity. Ray, I'll start with you. Mr. McGuire, you've had a distinguished career in financial services and helped author the definitive report on the cost of Black inequality when you were at Citi. What was the most surprising thing that you found when compiling that report, and what types of solutions would you prioritize?
First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for all that you do in representing the excellence in the world of journalism. I'm honored to be here with other panelists, all of whom I've had long-standing admiration and respect, and of course, the leader here, John Hope Bryant. And the report that you reference is one that is in fact overseen by research and reported and written by a Black economist by the name of Dana Peterson. And so I should acknowledge Dana and the work that she did, and what I think is probably the definitive piece on the impact of the inequality that exists in the system. And when I wrote the foreword to that report, I was honored to invoke the letter from a Birmingham jail by Dr. King, who reminded us that we are caught, as others have probably referenced here, in the inescapable network of mutuality, tied in the single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly. And so to that as a background, if I look at that report, what it did reference and what it disclosed was that if the wealth gap based on wages, education, housing, and investment were closed 20 years ago, that would have added about $16 trillion to the U.S. economy over that time period. It also says that to the extent that we close that wealth gap today, that the addition to the U.S. economy would be $5 trillion over the next 5 years. And that was written in 2020, in September of 2020. Those numbers just get amplified more by where we are currently. And as I think about the fundamental response to the question about where we can go from here, it rests and resides on what got us here, and that is the world of education. The huge opportunity that exists today, given the latest report on how Black and brown boys and girls are performing in the public school system and the actual opportunities that exist there. So would I were to be an investor, which I am, where I would make the largest investment would be in the world of education. Education, not only in the classic sense of the academy, but education in terms of, as some of the panelists have referenced, the skills, the hard skills. Today, if I think about where people can participate in the middle class, there is a lot of opportunity for plumbers and for electricians and for HVAC people and for welders. These are professions that exist where there is a tremendous amount of respect and need. When you strike a leak in your apartment, you can go and be a handy person and think you're going to Home Depot and Lowe's to get, but you better call a plumber. When the lights go out, you're looking for an electrician. The air conditioner don't work, you look for an HVAC person. And so these are opportunities that have historically been in our community. And remember, today we're trying to get away from, or we're transitioning back to a manufacturing-based economy. Let's reference what this means. The height of U.S. manufacturing took place in June of 1979. 1 in 5 Americans worked in manufacturing. Today, that's 1 in 20. And so we've transitioned from a manufacturing-based economy to a service-based economy. Wages have gotten lower. Our ability to participate in the middle class has been influenced by that. So the way we go forward, one, focus on basic education. How do we get our kids from pre-kindergarten through 3rd to 8th grade? How do we get them such that they have a basic skill set to participate in mainstream economy? And as we're accomplishing that, also offer skills that are tangible skills. I am clearly a proponent of getting higher education, but to the extent that that opportunity doesn't exist, and to the extent the opportunity that our children don't want to go that path, let's give them other paths. There are other ways to the middle class. There are other ways to wealth that don't necessarily reside in the Ivy League. And I'm okay with that. I come from the neighborhood. You know, my mother was a social worker. My grandfather went to school until he was aged the 3rd grade and then taught himself how to read by reading the Bible. So I understand the fundamentals of what's taking place today in our society. It gets captured in the report, yes, but it also gets lived out in realities of our neighborhood. Where do we go from here? Education.
Mike, I want to bring you in because I saw you nodding along, cheering to a lot of what he was saying. What do you agree with? But then also talk about your types of businesses that you've chosen to invest in your overall philosophy and business strategies.
First, let me pay my just to the gentleman I'm just blessed to be here with today, Raphael, Warnock, who I campaigned for twice. When me and my wife were a younger couple, we danced the night away on Saturday and go sit in the parking lot to church open and go in his church and sit in the top pew and we're still together after all these years. So he's a friend and has a place in my heart. Man, A-Rod, come on. You already know I'm a nerd and Braves fan, to the point I felt weird not having on a Braves cap when I realized I had on the Philly ones. I said, let me go get this pen and cap from this other little company that I like a lot. And Ray, just, man, you're preaching a sermon right now. In that, sometimes, man, I was raised by people who, to all the people out there, put it so I can't see all of you anymore, but I'm trusting you guys are seeing me as it has me just seeing myself. But my grandparents raised me. My grandfather grew up in 1922. My grandmother was born in 1932. So these people are 10 years apart. My grandfather had to drop out of school. And this is to the people beyond the folks I'm looking at. I have said for the last 10 years or more, the things that I've heard from the two men who've spoken, and I'm sure I'm going to hear from Alex as well. I've said this in earnest and in honest ways to hip hop, to the culture of hip hop, and to young Black people who are filing to be the next level of leadership. I am blessed to have grown up in the closest thing to the fantasy of Wakanda you could have had in Atlanta, Georgia. They had two conferences here in the early 1900s, 05 and 04, or 05 and 06, W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. And essentially, they always get represented in our community. It's these two radically different mindsets. One was for the talented 10th and for the Ray McGuires, for the ones who were going to become the best of us. But they didn't realize that the other, in a fertile ground, is what Booker T had in a Tuskegee Tuskegee College environment, where some people were going to make the bricks. And they were going to go to school and they were going to get their degrees in some type of trade, and they were going to build the infrastructure that you needed to house a college that would give you your engineers, that would give you your agricultural masters. I literally grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in a neighborhood where I grew up in a 900 square foot working class house, and a dump truck driver and a nurse, born in the 20s and 30s, raised these kids and their cousins in. And within 3 streets of me was the richest Black family in the Southeast, in the Russell Empire. So I have seen a life of heroes and villains that all look like me. I've seen a life in which I've understood that more of what happened to me was less circumstance and more choice when put in the circumstance. I understand the importance of making sure, like Warnock said, that we support being able to get our kids educated and fed properly in pre-K because of a woman named Miss Harrington. If Miss Harrington didn't own Harrington Daycare Centers, the entire West Side, which has always been poverty blighted because you had all the Black people together, from the richest to the poorest. But those kids went into kindergarten reading. And Georgia's not even required to go to kindergarten. But she was sending kids into kindergarten, into the LP Miles, into the Collier Heights Elementary. And she was sending kids in there reading because she knew even if they were hungry after they got home, if they could read, then eventually they were going to be able to be employed. If they could master a trade, eventually they would be able to become the working in the middle class. She understood her importance in the chain. I felt like my teachers, and I only had African-American teachers except for 3 my entire life. I went to schools named for Frederick Douglass. Our competitors was a school named Benjamin E. Mays. I grew up in a place where all was not fair, but opportunity was abundant. And the teachers acted as though it was their life's mission to help us realize our potential. Because I went into school a reader, because my teachers poured into me, that excellence was not something you could have, it was something that was expected of you. Because, Alex, I realized that I wasn't good at sports like all my other friends. I have a national championship, the national champion as a friend. I have a Super Bowl winner as a friend. I have a lifelong NFL, two other brothers as friends. But I knew I was just not running fast as my friends. I knew I wasn't going to study hard or practice hard, but I knew education would give me away. And eventually I worked my butt into Morehouse. But when I was working my tail off to try to get into Morehouse, I joined civic organizations. I understood that intelligence meant less of an opportunity for people to treat you badly. I also understood that if I could organize 3 of us to cut grass, we could cut more yards, we could make a bigger bounty. And I understood the trade of cutting grass like no one else. Doesn't mean I didn't do some dumb things, make some mistakes. But what I realized on the west side of Atlanta, The side of Atlanta that got people like Reverend Warnock into office, people like Andy Young into office, people that helped get Jimmy Carter into office, these working class, decent Black folks. You know, some was an angel, some were crooks, but everyone was together and everyone wanted to see these kids do well. I realized that Frederick Douglass, my principal, Dr. Samuel Hill, who was my personal Joe Clark, he wanted me to understand that Frederick Douglass understood with this quote, something that for the rest of my life changed me. It is easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. And I absolutely agree with what Raymond was saying, because I have been saying to my people for a decade, let's turn toward the trades. They're going to need us. I would rather have a plumber that understands the saying of Socrates than a nephew who understands Socrates only and cannot use a hammer and nail. It is high time that we understand Tuskegee as an institute was meant to teach people how to grow seeds out the ground and teach people how to engineer and be architects and have buildings. It's time that we understand that there is no better or worse. There is no 90th and 10%, that we're simply together. So my philosophy, even in business, has not been as grand as Raymond. I've not been as fortunate to be as willing to work hard and be an Alex, or to preach the word and be one of the best politicians Georgia's ever produced and Warnock. But what I have been is a responsible student of the knowledge bestowed upon me by the people in front of me, the people, including and not limited to the people like John Hope Bryan in my life, down to Ms. Pritchard, my elementary school teacher. I learned to reinvest and to constantly invest in the things, the people, and the stories around me. When you hear about me and T.I. opening Bankhead Seafood, we did not want to get into the sexy restaurant business and be the latest players on the move, making $80 million a year off a brand. We were not trying to be the new Noble. We knew nothing of that. What we knew was there was a woman who on Bankhead named Miss Helen Harden, who had had a business for 50 years. And at some point, she just said, I can't do this anymore. And she called who she could call, and that was her local rapper, T.I., and said, how would you like to buy this business? And T.I. called me and said, how would you like to buy this business? Because we understood that we weren't just buying a fried fish spot. We were buying a story and a legacy for a part of town which is now gentrifying. New people are coming. But if there's going to be a restaurant row, why shouldn't Miss Harden's restaurant stay on that row? Why shouldn't it be the first restaurant with a rooftop that people can walk to within 9 to 10 minutes of their house, and they don't have to take that $30 minutes north or south? So what we bought was a story. What we bought was an opportunity to master one store to get people. And that was kind of like my philosophy, period. When it came time to get into real estate, I bought in the same neighborhood I grew up in. I knew it was only 4 miles from downtown. I knew that I had married a smart woman because she didn't let me buy a car. She made me buy an apartment building. Tip, in similar fashion, bought the old Kmart that everyone used to shop at and go get ice cream. He's turned it into a 149 housing units. I think 20% affordable, if not more. We just reinvested in where we were. And where we were was fertile ground of working class Black folks. Where we were, much like Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver in Tuskegee, was good enough for us. And that's what we did. And that's just been my philosophy, and it'll continue to be. I try to invest in where I'm from in places that remind me of that. And that's where good, decent people need products and services. Something I'm very excited about this year is I bought a barbershop off Craigslist 12 years ago, and my wife didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. And it was because I said, well, I bought a shop. It was only $6,000. I sold one of my cars and did it. She said, yeah, dummy, you could have just let them go out of business and got the space yourself. And I was like, damn, I never thought of that, right? And that's when I knew I had married the right person. This woman from Savannah, Georgia, whose grandmother ran the shot house and the housing project. I married her, but she helped me think about money and look at things differently. So in the last 11 years of owning a barbershop and getting to know the community, helping politicians like Warnock getting elected, arguing over baseball, people in there talking about Ray McGuire, my brother's off the AUC talking about they want to be the next you. What I discovered was the barbershop in the Black community is a social center. We're the first barbershop to be in an NBA arena. We're in State Farm Arena. You can come get a cut, but more than just hang out with other members of your community you might not live next to. Besides being a social center, we've been a place that a brand is created. COVID sent us into a place where we were like, how are we going to keep it going? No one comes to get their haircut, but people bought t-shirts, and we started doing local artist collabs with people like Mike Janai and Trico. We started selling bars of soap, and people came back and said, we want more soap. And what we're growing into is a brand. And this year later, we're going to roll out a whole product line called the Shave Washing Room Shops line. And I'm very proud of that. So everything I've done has kind of been out of either very local to my neighborhood or neighborhoods like them, everything I've done has also been in, if I'm growing a brand as a rapper, if they can pay me to sing and dance and sell a bar of soap, why can't I create my own bar of soap? And I look forward to just being a student under John Hope Bryan and as a mentee and learning more. And I married a businesswoman, thank God. I told her my ambition is to make her Oprah Winfrey and me just kick it with Stedman all day, you know. So I married the right person. I am constantly a student. I have a modest set of businesses now that I'm growing, and I'm very proud to have been asked just to be here and give testimony today.
Amen. Thank you for sharing all of that. And Alex A-Rod Rodriguez, your personal story of how you learned about money and finance and you use those lessons to build a significant portfolio of investments, not only impressive, but it's super important and speaks to what Charlemagne was saying earlier about learning from the people who've done it. Can you share some of your journey with us?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be among this beautiful group of people and successful people. I'm inspired by all of you. I've studied some of you, and I wish I let off because you guys put a lot of pressure on me. I would first start by saying that, you know, I'm a lot more like the folks that are watching this and the folks that we're trying to inspire. You know, I grew up, I was born in 1975 in the shadows of old Yankee Stadium. My father was an entrepreneur and he had a shoe store at a house. They used to call him a human calculator because he was really good with numbers. And he was also a former baseball player, both Dominican, so I'm first generation Dominican with brown skin. And my mother, I saw her wake up every day at 3:30 in the morning, work at General Motors. She would have to take 3 trains and would come home most nights after dinner. And in 25 years, I never saw her miss a day of work. So I definitely got my work ethic and my inspiration from her. And then when I was 10, we kind of ran into some tough times. My father left us, and that left my 2 siblings, my brother and my sister, with a single mother, who then had to take on 2 jobs. And sometime when I was around 12 years old, we're at the local supermarket, and the bill was about $75. And I'll never forget this. Like, I remember this like it was yesterday. The bill was around $75. She reaches in her purse, she pulls out 55 bucks, and then she goes into another pocket. And to this day, I call it funny money. And I remember asking my mom, I said, "Mom, what is that?" That's like Monopoly money. And she looked down with a lot of shame and said, "You know, little Alex, this month the government's helping us a little bit." And it was at that time that I realized that I needed to be, while the youngest in the family, I needed to be the alpha and the leader. And I knew that the way out of that situation that we were in, because mom was getting older, was through financial literacy. And it was at that point that I thought the American dream was leaving me and leaving our family. But then I realized that the American dream is not about wealth and success. It's truly about grit, resilience, never giving up, and taking measured risk when you don't see or you don't really know what the outcome is going to be. And then that shifted to really being a great beneficiary of great mentors. I'm a real believer of you're an average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And for me, that person that changed my business life was Irving Magic Johnson, a 6'9" point guard that, you know, ran Showtime with Pat Riley and company. And when I realized that a man of color that looked like me, that acts like me, that is great at one sport, I thought, well, if you're great at one sport, and we've all gone through it, is they're going to limit you to just that. But here's a guy that went from his Laker shorts to his pinstripe suit in the business room, and has created a multi-billion-dollar platform. And we sat down 25 years ago, and we were supposed to meet for 30 minutes. He had a dinner with Mrs. Johnson. And that turned into a 3.5-hour dinner, where I still have 9 pages of notes where he shared his playbook with me. And to this day, I still use that playbook as my kind of business Bible. And today, one of my greatest thrills is the tens and tens of athletes and entertainers that I talk to that reach out to me daily, where I get a chance to mentor them and share my stories, just like Magic Johnson helped shape my story. Now I'm in an opportunity that I can bring other people in the room with me, my same kind of people, and really think about equality and really advocating about financial literacy. And it's really about learning people, showing people how to win, showing people the rules of engagement, the importance of education, and knowledge in business. And like one of the panelists said here, you don't have to have an Ivy League education to be a big winner. You can really find your way through education, grit, falling, getting back up, falling, getting back up. But learn those lessons along the way is really what's going to keep you moving on forward, because it's never a straight road to the top. It's really about, and I think baseball in many ways has shaped my business career, because I'm used to failing. If you fail 70% of the time, you go to Cooperstown. So I just keep going at it, and never giving up, and really getting to know people, getting to know my weaknesses, my competitive advantages, and then putting that in order to work and, you know, create a second career that I have for myself after baseball. Thank you.
Alex, thank you so much. Mike and Ray, I want to ask you guys before we let you go, what's your hope for the future, and what are you both most optimistic about? Ray,
So why don't I can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I have a, shall I live in hope? All men I hope live so. The answer is yes, I do live in hope, notwithstanding the challenging times that we are currently facing. I'm reminded of, one of the great generals, General Ferdinand Foch in the French in the World War I, who said, "They're attacking me on my left, my center's retreating, I'm on the attack." And at a moment in time where all seems dark, there's always joy tomorrow morning, joy in the morning, as the Reverend would tell us. And so I look for improvement and focus in education. I look for improvement in making certain that we recognize that, as Killer Mike has said, it's not only the 10th, but it's in the 90th, it is all of us together. And so my hope is that we recognize that our better days are ahead of us, notwithstanding the challenges that we have incurred and are incurring today. And that as we share forums like this and the experiences that we've had and the wisdom that we've gained over time, that we can continue to move forward in ways that, notwithstanding how difficult the waters that we have seen, we have been here before, and we will not only endure, but that will prevail.
Ray, thank you so much for being with us. Alex, I know we're running over and you have to jump. Thank you for sharing some of your playbook with us. John, I'm going to let you take over. I got to grab a kid from the bus stop, but thank you so much for looping me into this. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Alex Rodriguez, thank you very much, Janai. Appreciate you. Janai, I want to say a little bit about the panelists. I wanted to say that they're on screen, but I hope they can still hear me. First of all, Janai is an incredible force of nature. If you aren't watching her on the network, you should. I've been with her a couple of times on her weekend show. Please watch her and support her. She is the future, and obviously a good mother. So go on about your business. I want to acknowledge Alex Rodriguez. First, best I can tell, in the U.S., first Latino billionaire in America. If he's not the first and only, he's one of two or three. I don't know of another Latino billionaire in America. That's Alex Rodriguez. And he didn't make that money. He made his money in baseball. He built his wealth, Mayor, in real estate. Everybody you know who's black or brown, please listen to me, audience. Everybody you know who's black or brown, that were in sports or entertainment, Jay-Z, all these people, Beyonce, sports or entertainment, Dr. Dre, who became a billionaire, did it because they transitioned into business. So Alex Rodriguez is a model for an entire generation. I want to acknowledge him and thank him. He's always showing up in Atlanta for our forum, or whatever we ask him for free. Killer Mike, who just was on the screen, we'll bring him back on if we can. Killer Mike is, and he has a problem with the name. It's stuck. He's like, my name is Michael Render, right? but it's almost like there's two Mikes. There's Killer Mike, the rapper, which, by the way, one of the few rappers I can understand. I love his music. I listened to his last two albums on repeat. That probably the most played tracks on my car are Killer Mike's albums, because not only can I understand them, he's teaching. I mean, he is educating and teaching as he's singing and entertaining. It is brilliant. This guy is off the chain smart. Killer Mike, Michael Render. Killer Mike is a rapper. Michael Render is behind Killer Mike, and his wife Shayna is next to him. Behind every successful man is an exhausted woman. Killer Mike's off to the side. Michael Render's off the side, advising Killer Mike, the brand, about how to be a good businessman. He told me, Killer Mike told me that Michael Render told him one day, I was on the freeway, 4 o'clock Tuesday. I was driving on 85, Mr. Mayor, around the airport. I know exactly where I was. And he told me, the heck with this rap stuff. This is cool. I love it. I'm going to be the Jay-Z of the South. You remember that? and you're well on your way. And by the way, Jay-Z's team is on this call as a founding delegate. I mentioned Danya earlier as one of the delegates, and of course Jay-Z is a model for all of us.